Hi, friends. My name is Kunal Gupta, and I'm going to speak about employability as a tool for nation building. My idea for the world is employability in people. How do you discover it? How do you skill it? How do you nurture it? How do you apply it? And how do you scale it? What is employability? Employability is the ability of a person to get a job, to stay in the job, and to grow in the job to create a lifelong sustainability for himself as well as for the nation. It has become all the more important in this current age of AI, wherein machines have taken over and AI is going to dominate our futures. The importance of aptitude and thinking is so critical to survival in this world. And employability is one of those engines which is going to engage the youth, fuel the GDP, and possibly take the nation forward, uh, going many places. It's a very old proverb that we have heard. You feed a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man how to fish, you generate a livelihood for him for a lifetime. But when AI learns to fish, how are you going to survive? So you better adapt, learn, and you better get back to the earlier core skills that the humans had, which is creativity and adaptability to survive. Now, employability is going to be one of the most critical national economic strategies, and it's going to be an investment for a future. We need to build people's capability and also ensure that they are able to use and deploy them. Now, we all hear about industries, we all hear about nations trying to talk about job creation as a measure of statistic in terms of where the country is growing and where the country has to go in the future. However, job creation in today's time of technology, jobs become obsolete. They become seasonal with the heavy changes which are happening in the industry. And hence, what is going to be remaining mainstream is going to be employability in people. It's much deeper. For years, we have been told that India has always had an unemployment problem. You go to companies and they say that they have job positions and they don't have people. You go to people and they say that they have the right degrees, however, they don't have the jobs. Both of these statements are true. Both of these people cannot meet. The reason is there is a gap, and it is not called unemployment, it is called unemployability. Unfortunately, the education structures that we have today in the country, barely 50% of graduates are employable, barely 30% of diploma holders are employable. And whether we like it, we don't like it, but the fact is 3 in 10 youth do not have either a job, they don't have an education, or they don't have training. 95% people who work in this country have never been trained for the jobs that they are actually working on. And about 85% of this country is working in the informal sector. My idea is that the basic skills basically generate employability. People who can farm, people who can cook, people who can ride, people who can think, people who can communicate, they have the kind of jobs that they kind of have. You can generate jobs in farming. If in case you cook very well, you can run your restaurant, you can become a hawker, you can feed yourself, you can feed other people, you can generate your livelihood, you can sell. There is no limit to what you can achieve. If in case you are in the right business of communication and selling, you can sell real estate, you can sell possibly anything in any industry. You can ride, you can become a rider today in this current age of e-commerce. You can also run your own transportation setup, and your transportation business can scale to any heights based on the application of skills that you're able to use and apply. This is a generation which has never been taught employable skills. We are at a very critical juncture at this point of time, both within India as well as for other developing nations, wherein employability is going to be one of the most critical engines for moving dependents into creators and producers for the future. The trouble is the current system is currently designed only for a job. Whether it is in terms of teaching how the person should get a government job or a private job, there is no goal, there is no stress on how do you generate overall employability in a person, how do you generate more capacity out of a person, how do you create lifelong learnability in a person so that the person can always scale. We have been through turbulent times, we have survived, we are still leading the world in many skills, legacies, and generational values. I'll leave you with a very important skill that India has generations and for the world today. It's called yoga. Now, yoga is not dependent on the Western education model, and it is still one of the biggest employment generators in the world. It is one of those skills which has left and created a legacy of India in terms of the impact on mind, growth, mindset, overall your physical and mental ability to grow, survive, and see the world. It's a new way, it's a new age in which the world sees India. Now, similar to this, I'll just run you through a quick story before I come to the anatomy of employability and how we can lead to a very simple solution which can impact our country for lot many years. There's a guy in our company, his name is Prempal. He was a middle-aged man, about 37 years when I met him first. I met him in 2013. He was working as a guard in the building in which I had rented an office. I used to see him every day in and out. He was working as a guard for about 21 years back then, and he used to draw a salary of about 17,000 rupees. I could see that he was very sharp, he was intellect, he had great ideas, his ability to solve problems, whether they were related to electricity generation or people's coming in and out of the building. And I thought that maybe I can do something for him. Somewhere the idea of doing employability or doing skill development at that point of time came in by looking at people like him only. I hired him as a trainer. It's been about more than 10, 11 years now that he has been with us. Would you believe that he gets a salary of 58,000 rupees a month today? And maybe he has made more than 4.5 lakh rupees in incentives only. He has traveled at least about 40 cities because of what platform we were able to give. And this is where I would come in. You want to multiply these kind of prem pals into millions of factory workers on the floor. They need identification, they need scale, they need opportunities, and they can also take on the world. The job was never the point. You can always start from a point, but the point is, and the criticality is, you want to stay over, you want to keep multiplying, you want to keep growing beyond a certain scale. What exactly would be the tenets? Like I said, what is the anatomy of employability? Employability tenets would fundamentally be described into four parts. The first is the discovery of it. Almost 90% Indians do not exist in the digital ecosystem. They don't have a resume, they don't have a contract. The people who work for you, whether it's your maids, whether it's the people in and around our societies, they don't have an employment contract. There is no work contract. There is no digital presence about whether they're working, they're not working. 85% of them, like I said, are already in the informal sector. So how do you basically create the records? So one of the core solution is the fact that Government of India, Indian ecosystem already has about 5 lakh CSC center, common services center, known as Aadhaar card centers as well. You can currently just walk into one of those centers, speak into your own local dialect, generate a resume of your own, possibly even learn a skill digitally, adapt, create, apply for a job, or possibly even get a degree while you're working, while you're learning. And this lifelong education and this lifelong learnability is going to enhance your employability in the market and keep the economy sustainable. The second most important part is the skilling part of it. Where do you skill? What do you skill on? You got to skill on what the employer wants, what the industry wants. The skill sets which were present about 10 years back or 20 years back have changed. Economy has changed, technology has changed. You got to adapt. You got to learn the skill. There is a differentiation between our education system, our skilling system, and our hiring systems. Those are treated as three separate industries. We need to combine and conjoin all three of them together. Once three of them conjoin together, because ultimately they build the same pipeline. Ultimately, the person needs to generate employability, the person needs to get a job, and the person needs to sustain the economy. Otherwise, we are going to create a huge pool of dependence in this economy. We already have more and more people adding on to the list of subsidies in this country more than ever. And this list is not going to stop unless until we are going to combine and conjoin all the three parts. The third part is the application of it. How do you apply the skills that you have learned in the industry? How do you generate sustainability? How do you generate employability? How do you generate scale? If in case, like I said, you cook well, you can do anything from generating your employment. You can work. People in this country work as maids to provide sustenance for others. Some of them run their food stalls, some of them run the restaurant, some of them even go international and become master chefs in different countries and places. A very simple skill called cooking, very simple skill called cooking, simple skills called riding. Riding, if in case you can ride a bike, you can ride a car, you can even go professional in terms of what livelihood that you can create with transportation as a line of industry. Similarly, the third part would be the advancement of it. How do you keep climbing once you're hired and not just get freezed at one place? How do you create a force multiplier? How do you generate more employability from one employment sector? And how can you keep finding yourself, rediscovering yourself, and keep rising in the space? you know and one of the most critical aspects is going to be the fact that the more you're going to grow and help people in and around you, the more impact it is going to create in this nation from the space in which you as individuals are. Whenever you see people, do you see, are you growing them, are you helping them, are they growing, are they stuck? Simple unit level help can possibly make a huge impact on people today. Now we get a choice today whether we want to look at the nation in terms of how we are going to count our jobs or how do we count our employability. I gave you an example of Prempal, the same guy, the same building, two different jobs. Had he continued working as a guard, maybe he would have gone from a salary of 17, 18,000 rupees to maybe 20,000 rupees today. But the application of the same skill, the same mindset in a great job possibly took him to a salary of 58,000 rupees, and that's a scale available to possibly every individual who wants to do something with his own talent, with his own life in this market today. Now, what exactly are we going to do is the fact that we need to understand that India has possibly some of the most critical youth in the world today. Either these youth will become dependent or they will become creators and producers for the future. An employable India is going to be an asset to the world, and it is going to lead the way forward in terms of how the world sees India and India's leadership in the next generation for the years to come. This is where I stand.